Hello and welcome to the Halloween edition of Pro Visions. I am Quentin Taylor and I am dressed up today as Ron Burgundy.
And I am Sarah Combs and I am dressed up today as Veronica Corningstone.
Today, man, I'm telling you what, I'm not going to be doing San Diego sports. Might as well do Murray sports today while I'm at it. A lot of interesting things going on this weekend in Murray State sports. And of course, first off, we need to mention the Eastern Kentucky matchup, the homecoming matchup, as it was. Murray State losing that one 26-13. They go on the road very soon, and that'll be a November 4th matchup, which will be Saturday against Jacksonville State. After that, they will be back here at Roy Stewart Stadium to play against Tennessee Tech the following week. And then after that, they'll follow up with the last matchup of the regular season against Southeast Missouri over in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So that'll be some interesting stuff going on there. Also, how about we mention some soccer going on here? Murray State with a great season for women's soccer. I'm telling you what, they have been on a tear. The last matchup they won was against SIU Edwardsville, who knocked them off last season in the OVC tournament, and they're looking to get some revenge this year against Southeast Missouri. That will be a Friday matchup this Friday, November 3rd. I cannot believe that the fall season is nearly over and we're heading into wintertime. And speaking of wintertime, why don't we mention a little bit about some Murray High sports here? And of course, Murray High will face off against McLean County. That's going to be the Class 2A Russell Athletic KHSAA Commonwealth Gridiron Bowl. That'll be a 7:30 p.m. matchup. That will be at home, and that was kind of what Murray High had been expecting, to be at home, to have that dominant field, and they're going to be going up against McLean County, which was already predetermined even before the Union County matchup, in which they lost over at Union County this past week, 39-29. But moving ahead from that, another interesting thing that happened this weekend, Murray High taking first place at state for band. I'm telling you what, that's a great accomplishment, and of course, Professor Wright is happy about that. She was probably over there filming it over there with her son. Her son is a part of the band, and so that is something else for them to carry that, because I know they had wanted it for so many years. But switching from that, let's go to something else here. Basketball is just around the corner. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. So both the men's and women's team will be taking the CFSB Center for the first time this season. The women are playing an exhibition game against Georgetown at 5 p.m. Just thinking a little bit about maybe who the starters could be. I was thinking, obviously, Kashunan James, KJ, she'll be out on the floor. She's really their force as far as scoring, defensive play, and everything else goes, rebounding. Number 2, Bria Bethay. 3, Abria Golich, Jasmine Borders, and I'm thinking it may be a stretch. I don't know Coach Rochelle's rules on playing freshmen, but if any freshman is going to play, I would love to see Janika Griffith-Wallace play. She's a guard. Griffith-Wallace is a guard. We watched her play at Racermania. She played mainly a point guard position. But looking at this starting 5, really the only thing that I'm seeing and concern that I have in their entire roster actually is the post-play game. They don't really seem to have any true post players. I have seen a few on their team picture that look like, you know, they have the look of a post player, but I'm just really excited to see how Rochelle grooms these players and gets them into shape. I have heard that Coach Turner is really good at keeping her players' nutrition very well and keeping them in good shape. So I'm excited to see with Ms. Turner her offensive style, her defensive style, how she's going to use the players that she has in order to win basketball games. So moving on to the men's team, they play McKendree at 7 p.m. after the women's in the CFSB Center. Obviously, for the starting 5, we're going to have Terrell Miller and Jonathan Stark. And then after that, I'm interested to see if Breon Sanchez and Jalen Dupree start together, if you know, Coach McMahon is going to put them in together, if he's going to switch them out, you know, interchange them in order to keep them in shape and throughout the duration of the season to keep them from injuries and being over fatigued. And then for the fifth player, I think it's we'll just have to wait and see who he puts out there. Byron Hawkins actually comes to mind whenever I think of that. He played a lot last year, coming off the bench, and he did some really good things. He had some really clutch plays whenever the team needed it. But as far as Coach McMahon as the coach, I'm really interested to see how he bounces back from last year, having that losing record. How he's going to utilize Stark and Miller with this team. And then I'm excited to see his big man game. I know that we've talked about his big man game last year, having Breon Sanchez and Jalen Dupree. I'm interested to see how their footwork has improved, how their post play in the paint has improved, and I'm just really I'm interested to see how McMahon uses not only those big men that he does have, but also putting that together with Stark and Miller.
I'm interested too, and of course you had mentioned something about going back to the girls, their size. They lost a couple of players last season. Of course, Katie McKenzie is no longer there. Kyra Gillage is no longer there. So that's going to be a spot that they have to try to fill. They do have size on their team, a lot of 6-foot players, but that's going to be interesting. And of course, you mentioned something good about them eating good. I think nutrition is going to be a huge factor for them. And of course, last season, with me going on the road with the women's team, it's definitely one of those things that they have to have. If they're going to be successful this season, they've got to be in shape. They've got to have the food intake to be good. And they've got to be able to play those positions good and play as a cohesive unit, not just having one person take the shots all the time or switching between who gets to take the shots. They kind of have that cohesion going on. And on the men's side, you mentioned something good. Coach McMahon, he's coming off of a losing season. He's trying to make sure that his players are going to get back on track. And I think the two biggest players that you mentioned with Stark and Miller are going to be huge. I mean, you cannot underestimate those players and their abilities. They're good players, but they have to get going for the team to be able to win numerous games. But they got to start out good. They had that good win at the very beginning of the season to start it off against Illinois State with the buzzer beater by Jonathan Stark. And of course, they had a little bit of momentum into the OVC tournament, but they've got to keep that momentum going throughout the season. They can't have some of those lapses that they had.
Absolutely, and it's really hard to rely on two players for an entire season. A basketball season is really, really long, and you might not think, but playing those extra few minutes because you don't have anyone else that you can trust to put on the floor can really take a toll on a player's body. So as a coach, you want to be able to have different players that you can bring in and get your star players off and get them those extra 5 minutes of rest. And just as an opposing team, whenever you see that maybe only 2 players are having to carry the team, you can lock those 2 players down easily. Triangle in 2. You face guard those 2 players, and then you have to make another player make a play, and that's what I'm really excited to see. I really hope that this team peaks because the beginning. I feel like fans sometimes forget that the beginning of the season matters absolutely, but a team is not supposed to be peaking at the beginning of a season. They're supposed to be peaking come tournament time, and so I'm really excited to see, and I really think that Coach McMahon is going to groom his team and these players and have them put together. And with Stark and Miller absolutely leading, this team, I do think that we will see some breakout games from other players that have to step up and have to take a little bit of that load on their back.
And I think one of those players that comes to mind is Jalen Dupree and another player, Breon Sanchez.
Absolutely.
They have to be a cohesive unit. I mean, we always talk about the NBA and how Golden State is such a cohesive unit. They play as a team. Murray State has got to utilize that, and they've got to play as a team. And Belmont, Belmont's been doing that for years. Coach Rick Bird, his team is always about team basketball. There's not a standout player on their team usually, and they have their team play cohesive that's what Murray State's got to utilize. I mean, they can't just go down the court and jack shots up. They can't just go down there and have one player just taking all the shots. They've got to have the switch around. They've got to run their offense, and it's the same with the women too. They've got to run their offense. They've got to get in their sets. They've got to get in their formations, and they've got to try to do what they do best, you know, play the game to their strengths.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that also just goes back to knowing what offense and defense works best for your team. So when you have, you know, a quicker team, you want to run and gun, and you want to get out, and you want to, you know, tire down the other team if you know that, you know, you're quicker than they are. But on the opposite end, if you know that maybe a team is quicker than you are, you know, you want to slow that game down, and you want to make them play defense. And also, last year, something that both teams did very well at is, you are right, in basketball, you have to have a cohesive team, you know, to make sure that the opposing team doesn't lock down on one player. But what both of our teams were really good at last year was putting the ball in someone's hands when they were hot. If someone, for example, last year in the tournament, Jonathan Stark, the ball was in his hands, you know, at every crucial part of the game, which it should have been, because during the tournament, he was absolutely hot. Everything that he was putting up was falling. And then also, you know, Kishannon James. KJ is so good. I've always been so impressed of how strong that she is. She makes such strong moves, and she has such quick footwork. It is absolutely impossible to guard her. You know, like I said last podcast, if you sag off of her, she's going to drain the three. And then if you go up and you guard her, you know, she's going to give you that jab step. You're gonna get scared. You're going to watch her feet, and she's going to go by you. That's just how good of a player that she is. So just talking about the cohesive unit, I absolutely think that's important. But another thing that our teams are really good at is putting the ball in the hands of who they know is going to score.
And I tell you what, I was really impressed whenever I saw Kishannon James play against that ranked team in Florida State a couple of years back. I mean, they had a good, solid team. And Kishannon James was able to take apart that team. I mean, she was able to score. She was in the 20s. I mean, I think she scored about 25 points. So it's all about finding the hot hand. Sports. Oh, hello.
Sports.
Hello, what's going on? I like your dress.
Thank you. You have a very great tie on today.
I can't see with your green right there. And I hope you kill this broadcast today.
And your hair looks fantastic.
And those golden earrings are great.
And this is awesome.
For all of us here at Provisions, I'm Ron Burgundy. And remember, you stay classy, Murray, Kentucky.
And thanks for stopping by.
But I mean, you stay classy.
And thanks for stopping by.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Thanks for stopping by.
Stay classy.